They say carrying a life on your back changes you. They're wrong. It doesn't change you. It reveals who you always were beneath the uniform, beneath the kill count, beneath the lies you told yourself to sleep at night. Her name was Sylkara. 8 legs, compound eyes that shimmered like oil on water. A diplomat who knew too much. And me. I was the broken human mercenary stupid enough to think one last job would buy me peace. Instead, it bought me a war with 8 empires, a truth that could shatter galaxies, and a reason to remember what honor used to mean before I buried it in blood. The job posting was simple, too simple. Transport, 1 exiled diplomat, origin, Veska Station, destination, neutral zone outpost 47, payment, 200,000 credits, discretion required. I should have walked away. Should have known that when 8 interstellar empires want someone dead, there's no such thing as a quiet transport job. But I was 3 months behind on ship repairs, living on ration paste and bad decisions. And my credentials had more black marks than a convicted war criminal's rap sheet. I took the job. Veska Station smelled like recycled air and desperation, same as every border station in the fringe sectors. The docking bay attendant barely looked at me when I paid the bribe to keep my ship's registry off the public logs. My vessel, the Ashfall, wasn't much to look at. A decommissioned human frigate I'd gutted and rebuilt with salvaged parts and spite. She had scorch marks from 3 different plasma types, a reactor that hummed like a dying insect, and hull plating held together with weld scars and prayer. But she was mine. The only thing in the universe I could still call home. The contact meeting was set in a cargo bay on the lower ring, the kind of place where station security didn't ask questions because they'd been paid not to. I arrived early, hand resting on the pulse pistol under my coat. Old habits, the kind that kept you breathing in a galaxy where trust was currency nobody could afford. She was waiting in the shadows. I'd seen arachnids before. The Silk caste were common enough in diplomatic circles, elegant 8-legged beings who moved with an unsettling grace that made most species uncomfortable. But Sylkara wasn't like the polished ambassadors I'd glimpsed on newscasts. She was smaller, maybe 5 feet tall at the thorax, her exoskeleton a deep midnight blue that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. She wore no ceremonial silks, no status markers. Just a simple traveler's cloak that did nothing to hide the 8 compound eyes studying me with an intelligence that felt invasive. "You're the human," she said. Her voice came through a translator disc attached to her thorax, but something in the cadence felt natural, almost warm. Marcus Webb, former colonial Marines, dishonorably discharged after the Praxis Moon incident. Freelance transport specialist, wanted in 14 systems for smuggling, contract violation, and assaulting an Orion syndicate enforcer. "You did your homework," I said, keeping my expression flat. "You want to recite my breakfast menu too, or can we get to business?" "I want to know if you'll run when the shooting starts." I met her gaze. All 8 eyes. It should have been unsettling, but I'd stared down worse. "I don't run. I might take the long way around, might charge extra for hazard pay, but I don't abandon cargo once I've been paid. I'm not cargo, Mr. Webb. I'm a person." Something in her tone made me pause. There was steel there, but also exhaustion, the kind that came from fighting battles nobody else could see. I'd heard that weariness in my own voice, back when I still bothered to speak. "Fair enough," I said. "But the job posting said Exiled Diplomat. Didn't mention why 8 empires have kill orders on you." Sylkara moved closer, her legs making that distinctive clicking sound on the metal deck. "If I tell you, you'll refuse the job. Or worse, you'll try to sell me to the highest bidder." "Try me." She studied me for a long moment, mandibles twitching slightly, a gesture I couldn't read. Then she reached beneath her cloak and pulled out a data crystal, the kind with military-grade encryption. It glowed faint amber in her grip. This contains proof that the Ascendancy War, the one that killed 40 billion across 50 systems, wasn't started by territorial disputes or resource conflicts. It was engineered, deliberately, by a coalition of powers who profit from chaos. She paused. The 8 empires who want me dead were all part of that coalition. My blood went cold. The Ascendancy War had ended 7 years ago, but its scars were still fresh. Entire planets glassed. Refugee fleets scattered across the void. I'd lost people in that war. Good people. If what she was saying was true, you have proof. Intercepted communications, financial records, testimonies from 3 separate intelligence operatives who disappeared after coming forward. I was part of the investigation, a neutral observer for the Galactic Mediation Council. When I compiled the evidence, they tried to silence me. My entire delegation was eliminated. I survived only because a human attaché named Sarah Chen gave her life to get me off-world. Sarah Chen. The name hit me like shrapnel. I'd known Sarah. We'd served together before my discharge. Back when I still believed the uniform meant something, she'd been idealistic, brilliant, everything I'd stopped being, and she was dead because she'd tried to do the right thing. Why come to me? I asked, voice rougher than intended. Because Sarah told me once that if she ever needed someone who couldn't be bought, who'd spite the universe itself before breaking his word, she'd find you. She said you were an asshole with a death wish and a conscience you pretended not to have. Sylkara's eyes seemed to soften. She also said you were the best soldier she ever knew. The cargo bay felt colder. Sarah's ghost was standing between us now, demanding something I wasn't sure I had left to give. 200,000 won't cover this, I said. Not if 8 empires want you dead. I know, but it's all I have. I should have walked away. Should have told her to find another sucker with a hero complex and a death wish. But I kept seeing Sarah's face, kept hearing her laugh when she'd caught me smuggling medical supplies to a refugee camp I wasn't supposed to care about. She'd known even then that beneath the cynicism and bad decisions, there was still something worth saving. Ashfall departs in 30 minutes, I said. Bring only what you can carry. And if you slow me down, I'm leaving you in an escape pod with coordinates to the nearest station. Sylkara's mandibles clicked in what might have been relief. Thank you, Mr. Webb. Don't thank me yet. We're not even off this station. She was right not to. We barely made it to the Ashfall before the first kill team arrived. They came fast and professional. A 6-member Krevak assault squad armed with plasma lances and hollow shields. Station security conveniently vanished, alarms mysteriously disabled. I'd seen this kind of operation before, clean and coordinated, the signature of imperial wetwork teams. I got Sylkara through the airlock and sealed it behind us, then sprinted for the cockpit while she strapped into the co-pilot seat. Her 8 legs adapted to the crash webbing with unsettling efficiency. They're breaching the outer door, she said, mandibles tight. I noticed. I fired up the reactor, skipping half the safety checks. The Ashfall groaned in protest, hull plates rattling as systems came online. Now hold on to something. I'm strapped in. Hold on to something anyway. The docking clamps disengaged with a metallic shriek. I didn't wait for clearance, didn't wait for the bay doors to fully open. I punched the thrusters, and the Ashfall tore free from the station in a spray of sparks and torn metal. Alarms screamed. The view screen showed the Krevak team scattering as we rocketed past, their plasma lances tracking us but missing as I threw the ship into a hard spiral. You're insane, Sylkara shouted over the roar of overtaxed engines. You hired me, remember? I cut thrust, let the ship coast for 2 seconds, then fired the lateral maneuvering jets at full burn. The Ashfall flipped end over end, and I kicked the main drive just as a missile streaked past where we would have been. It detonated against the station's outer hull, blooming orange and deadly. 2 more ships were moving to intercept, sleek Orion corvettes with weapons hot. I could see the targeting locks painting the ashfall, could feel the calculations running through my head, the same combat geometry that used to keep me alive when I still wore the uniform. "Jump drive now," Sylkara said. "Not in Atmo range. We'll tear ourselves apart." "Then get us clear." I pulled a maneuver I'd learned from a smuggler on Titan Station, something stupid and desperate that violated at least 6 laws of physics and common sense. I dumped all power to rear shields and dove straight toward the station's gravity well, using its mass to slingshot us past the corvettes at an angle they couldn't match. Their weapons fire raked our shields, alarms shrieking as capacitors overloaded, but we were already past, already accelerating on a vector that would take us out of interdiction range. "Jump coordinates locked," I shouted. 5 seconds. The stars stretched, reality folded, and the ashfall punched through the skin of normal space into the howling chaos of FTL transit. We'd made it. Barely. I slumped in the pilot's chair, hands shaking from adrenaline crash. Beside me, Sylkara's exoskeleton was rigid, her breathing fast through the translator's pickup. "You do that often?" she asked finally. "Only when people tried to kill me. So yeah, pretty often." She made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Sarah was right about you." She usually was. I checked the damage readouts. Shields at 30%, hull integrity at 72, reactor temperature climbing toward the red line. Nothing fatal, but nothing good either. "We've got 16 hours in FTL before we reach the first waypoint. You should rest." "What about you?" "I don't sleep much anymore." Sylkara studied me with those alien eyes, seeing things I didn't want seen. "The Praxis Moon incident. What really happened there?" My jaw tightened. "That's not part of the job." "No. But if we're going to survive the next few days, I need to know who you are. The real you, not the reputation." I stared at the streaking light of FTL, at the endless void rushing past. And despite every instinct telling me to shut down, to keep the walls up, I found myself talking. "Praxis Moon was a civilian mining colony," I said quietly. 20,000 people, mostly families. The colonial marines received intel that insurgents were using the colony as a base, hiding among the civilians. We were ordered to go in hard, root them out by any means necessary. And the intel was wrong. There were no insurgents, just miners and their kids, scared out of their minds when we kicked in their doors. But my commanding officer didn't care. He said we'd come too far to leave empty-handed, that we needed results to justify the operation. He ordered us to round up suspected sympathizers, 50 people, men, women, teenagers. He wanted them interrogated. My hands were shaking now. I gripped the armrests to steady them. I refused, called him out in front of the whole unit. He threatened me with court-martial, with execution for insubordination. I told him I didn't care, that if he wanted to torture civilians, he'd have to go through me first. What did he do? He ordered the rest of my squad to stand down. Then he put a gun to my head and pulled the trigger. Sylkara's mandibles went still. "But you're here." The gun misfired. 1 in 1,000 mechanical failure. I knocked him unconscious, locked him in a storage room, and evacuated the 50 civilians using our dropship. By the time command figured out what happened, I'd scattered them across 3 different refugee stations with new identities. I exhaled slowly. They discharged me the next day, dishonorably, said I was mentally unstable, a liability to unit cohesion. And the civilians, they lived. That's what matters. Sylkara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Sarah told me you were court-martialed for assaulting a superior officer. She never mentioned the rest." "She wouldn't. Sarah believed in the system, thought it could be fixed from inside. I just gave up on it. You didn't give up on those civilians. That was different. Was it? I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because deep down, I knew she was right. I'd given up on a lot of things, on hope and justice and the idea that good people could win. But I'd never given up on the one thing that mattered. When someone needed help, when lives were on the line, I showed up, even if it cost me everything. The first waypoint was a debris field in the Varus expanse, the corpse of a shattered moon that had been a battleground centuries ago. Perfect place to hide, to let the ship's systems cool down and run diagnostics while I tried to figure out our next move. Sylkara had retreated to the cargo bay, converting a corner into something resembling a web structure. Watching her work was mesmerizing and disturbing in equal measure, the way her legs moved with precise coordination, spinning silk from organic spinnerets that shimmered like liquid mercury under the dim lights. "It's how my people rest," she explained when she caught me staring. "Suspended. It helps distribute weight, reduces strain on the exoskeleton. Doesn't look comfortable. Your species sleeps lying down on flat surfaces. To us, that seems equally strange." She paused in her work. "We're more alike than you think, Mr. Webb. Both of us are uncomfortable in our own skins, running from things we can't change. You don't know anything about me. I know you haven't slept in 36 hours. I know you check the ship's sensors every 3 minutes, even though you have proximity alarms. I know you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, because in your experience, it always does." I grunted, not bothering to deny it. She was right on all counts. "You want to tell me what's really on that data crystal, the whole truth this time?" Sylkara's mandibles clicked, a gesture I was starting to recognize as anxiety. The Ascendancy War was a test run. The Coalition wanted to see if they could destabilize entire sectors, create refugee crises, and profit from the reconstruction contracts, weapons sales, resource extraction rights on devastated worlds, political leverage over weakened governments. She pulled the crystal from beneath her cloak. "This proves it. Names, dates, financial transfers. 317 officials across 8 empires, all coordinating through encrypted channels. And they'll kill anyone who threatens to expose them. Not just kill, they'll erase. My delegation, 23 diplomats and support staff, were vaporized by an orbital strike that was officially blamed on a reactor malfunction. Sarah got me out minutes before the attack. She knew something was coming. Had been investigating on her own." Sylkara's voice wavered. She shoved me into an escape pod and stayed behind to manually override the launch sequence. I watched her through the porthole as the station disintegrated around her. The pain in her voice was raw, familiar. I'd carried that same weight since the day I watched good people die for doing the right thing. Why not just release the data, send it to every news network, every independent journalist? Because I'm an arachnid. My species has no homeworld, no unified government. We live as minorities in other empires, always guests, never citizens. If I release this alone, they'll discredit me, call it fabricated propaganda. Anti-establishment conspiracy theories, they'll spin it until nobody believes a word. She met my gaze. But if a human presented it, someone with military credentials, someone who's already been made a pariah for standing up to authority, that would be harder to dismiss. Understanding hit me like cold water. That's why you came to me, not just for transport. You want me to be the face of this. I want someone the Coalition can't easily silence, someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Sarah believed you were that person. I'm choosing to trust her judgment. I stood up, pacing the narrow cargo bay. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to drop Sylkara at the nearest neutral station and disappear into the black. I'd spent 7 years avoiding exactly this kind of trouble, this kind of responsibility. But I kept coming back to Sarah, to the look in her eyes when she'd caught me crying alone after Praxis Moon, when she'd sat with me and said nothing because she understood that some wounds didn't need words. She died believing in this, believing that exposing the truth mattered, that justice was worth the cost. "If I do this," I said slowly, "we're not just talking about transport anymore. We're talking about a war. Those 8 empires will throw everything they have at us." "I know. And I'm not exactly a public speaker. I'm a washed-up mercenary with a drinking problem and anger management issues." Sarah said you were the most honest person she'd ever met. That you'd rather die than lie, even when the truth hurt. Sarah had a talent for seeing things that weren't there anymore. Or maybe you've been hiding from yourself for so long you forgot what she saw. Sylkara moved closer, her voice gentle. "I'm not asking you to be a hero, Mr. Webb. I'm asking you to be the man who saved 50 civilians when everyone else was willing to look away. That man is still in there." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, that the person Sarah had known was gone, buried under 7 years of bad choices and worse company. But the words stuck in my throat because deep down, in that quiet place I tried to ignore, I knew she was right. I'd been running. From responsibility, from connection, from the possibility that maybe I could still make a difference. It was easier to play the cynic, to pretend nothing mattered. Safer. But safety had never been what I was good at. "We'll need allies," I said finally. "People we can trust. The kind who won't sell us out the moment things get difficult. Do you know anyone like that?" I thought about it. Most of my contacts were smugglers, information brokers, and black market dealers who'd backstab their own mothers for the right price. But there was one person, one name I'd avoided for years because reaching out felt too much like admitting I needed help. "Maybe," I said. "There's someone on Kepler Station, former intelligence operative, went independent after some kind of falling out with her handlers, goes by tricks. If anyone can help us verify your data and find a secure way to release it, she can. Will she help? If I can convince her I'm not completely insane, maybe. She owes me a favor from a job on Arcturus, though she'd probably argue the debt's expired by now. Then we go to Kepler Station. It's 4 jumps from here, through 2 contested zones. We'll need to avoid major shipping lanes, stick to the backwater routes where pirates and fringe militias operate. Better pirates than imperial kill squads. Don't be so sure." I pulled up the nav charts on my wrist display. Some of those fringe militias would sell their own children for a chance at the bounty on your head, and pirates don't ask questions. They just shoot first and loot the wreckage. We spent the next hour plotting a route that would keep us off the main nav beacons and away from any system with significant military presence. It was going to take 8 days instead of 3, burning through fuel reserves I couldn't afford to replace, but it was the only way to minimize the chance of interception. The ship's computer beeped, proximity alarm flashing yellow. I pulled up the tactical display and cursed under my breath. 3 contacts, holding position at the edge of the debris field. They were trying to look like salvage vessels, low power drives and minimal emissions, but I'd been in enough firefights to recognize a hunter-killer formation when I saw one. "We've got company," I said, "and they're not here by accident." Sylkara moved to the sensor station with that eerie grace of hers. "How did they find us?" "Good question." I ran a diagnostic on the Ashfall's systems, looking for trackers, bugs, anything that might have been planted during our escape from Veska Station. Clean, which meant someone had predicted our route, known we'd stop here to regroup. "You said your delegation was eliminated. Any survivors besides you?" "No. I watched them die." Then someone talked. Someone knew you were alive and reached out to make contact. Sylkara's eyes widened. The broker who arranged your contract. He knew the meeting location, the timing. And he probably sold that information to the highest bidder the moment we left the station. I fired up the engines, running silent but ready to punch out at a moment's notice. Which means they've been tracking us, waiting to see where we'd hole up before making their move. The three contacts began moving, spreading out to cover possible escape vectors. Professional, coordinated. Whatever crew was running those ships, they weren't amateurs. "Can we fight them?" Sylkara asked. 3 against 1, not unless you've got a hidden weapon system I don't know about. I checked the tactical options. The debris field offered some cover. Massive chunks of shattered moon that would play havoc with targeting sensors, but it also limited our maneuverability. If we ran, they'd chase us down in open space. If we stayed, they'd box us in and pound us until the Ashfall's shields failed, which left option 3. "Hold on," I said, already plotting an insane trajectory. "We're going deeper into the field. That's suicide. The debris density, our shields won't hold." "That's what they're counting on. They think we're cornered, think we'll either run or surrender. They're not expecting us to do something stupid." I pushed the throttle forward, and the Ashfall dove into the debris field, threading between massive tumbling fragments of ancient rock and twisted metal. The ship shuddered as smaller pieces pinged off the hull, alarms screaming about collision risks and shield strain. I ignored them, trusting my instincts and muscle memory, flying the way I used to in the war when enemy fire was so thick you couldn't think, could only react. Behind us, the hunter-killers followed. They were faster, more maneuverable, closing the gap with predatory efficiency. Plasma bolts streaked past, carving glowing scars into the debris around us. One shot clipped our port stabilizer and the Ashfall lurched, artificial gravity flickering. "Shields at 40%, Sylkara shouted. I spotted what I was looking for, a massive fragment the size of a city block, riddled with tunnels from ancient mining operations. I aimed straight for it, pushing the engines past their safety limits. "You're going to crash into it," Sylkara said, mandibles clenched tight. "Almost." I waited until the last possible second, until I could see individual details in the pitted surface, then fired the ventral thrusters at maximum burn. The Ashfall flipped over and dove beneath the fragment, so close that I could have reached out and touched the rock if the hull wasn't in the way. The hunter-killers followed, but they were moving too fast, couldn't match the sudden maneuver. 2 of them tried to brake and collided with each other in a spectacular explosion of flame and shrapnel. The third pulled up hard, but scraped along the fragment's surface, tearing its belly open in a shower of sparks. We shot out the other side of the field and I engaged the jump drive before they could regroup. The stars stretched, reality bent, and we were gone. In the silence that followed, Sylkara made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "You're absolutely insane." "So I've been told." My hands were shaking again, adrenaline crashing like a wave, but we're alive. That's what counts. For now, they'll keep coming. Whoever hired them won't stop with one failed attempt. I know. That's why we need Trix. She'll have resources, contacts, ways to move that we don't. I checked the jump timer. 4 hours until we drop out at the next waypoint. You should rest. What about you? I told you. I don't sleep much. Sylkara studied me with those alien eyes, and I had the uncomfortable feeling she could see through every defense I'd built. You need to rest too, Marcus. You're no good to either of us if you collapse from exhaustion. It was the first time she'd used my first name, something about hearing it in her translated voice, soft and genuine, made the walls crack just a little. Maybe later, I said, but we both knew I was lying. She retreated to her web without another word. But I felt her watching me even after she'd settled into rest. Like she was standing guard over the broken human who'd agreed to carry the weight of her impossible mission. The jump timer counted down, the ship hummed around me. and I sat alone in the cockpit, surrounded by darkness and the ghosts of everyone I'd failed, wondering if Sarah had been right to believe in me, or if I was just going to let her down one more time. 4 jumps to Kepler Station, 8 empires hunting us, a data crystal that could topple governments and start new wars. And me, a washed-up soldier who'd stopped believing in heroes a long time ago. The universe had a sick sense of humor, but I'd made a promise. To Sarah's memory, to the 50 civilians I'd saved on Praxis Moon, to the man I used to be before the world taught me that honor was a liability. I'd see this through. Get Sylkara to safety, help her expose the truth, make sure Sarah's sacrifice meant something, even if it killed me. Especially if it killed me, because maybe that was the only way left to prove I'd been worth saving in the first place. The stars streaked past. The void waited. And somewhere in 8 empires, powerful people were plotting our deaths with the same cold efficiency they'd used to engineer a war. Let them come. Let them throw everything they had at us. I'd learned a long time ago that humans don't break easy. We bend, we adapt, we improvise with the broken pieces. And when they finally push us too far, when they back us into a corner with nothing left to lose, that's when we become something they never expected. Dangerous. Kepler Station was a chaotic mess of interconnected HAB modules and jury-rigged docking spars. A frontier outpost that had grown into something resembling a city through sheer stubbornness and criminal enterprise. No central authority, no imperial oversight, just a loose collection of factions who'd agreed not to blow each other up as long as the money kept flowing. Perfect place for people like Trix who operated in the gray spaces between law and anarchy. We docked at Bay 17, paying triple the usual fee to keep the Ashfall's registry encrypted and our faces off the security feeds. I'd changed into civilian clothes, nondescript cargo pants and a worn jacket that hid the pulse pistol at my hip. Sylkara wrapped herself in a traveler's cloak that covered most of her body, but there was no hiding what she was. Arachnids drew attention anywhere outside their home districts, and on Kepler Station, attention meant trouble. "I stay close," I told her as we made our way through the crowded promenade. "Don't make eye contact, don't respond to provocations, and if shooting starts, get behind me." "I'm not helpless, Marcus." "Never said you were. But I'm better at violence than you are, and I'd like to keep it that way." Trix operated out of an information brokerage in the lower commercial district, a nondescript office squeezed between a weapon shop and a narcotic den. The sign outside read "Data Solutions" in 3 languages, which was Trix's idea of humor, since the only solution she offered usually involved blackmail or strategic information leaks. The front desk was staffed by a heavyset Orion who looked like he could bench press a shuttle. He didn't look up from his data pad when we entered. "We're here to see Trix," I said. "She's busy. Make an appointment. Tell her Webb's here. She'll make time." That got his attention. He looked me over, then Sylkara, and something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or suspicion. "Wait here." He disappeared through a back door. Sylkara moved closer to me, mandibles twitching with barely contained anxiety. "I don't like this. It feels like a trap." "Everywhere feels like a trap when 8 empires want you dead. Relax. Trix is paranoid, but she's solid. You trust her." "I trust that she values her reputation more than a quick payoff. In her line of work, trust is the only currency that matters." The Orion returned and jerked his head toward the back. 5 minutes. "And your friend stays here." "Not happening," I said. "We both go in, or neither of us does." He looked ready to argue, but a voice crackled over his comm, sharp and feminine. "Let them both through, Krell. And if Webb tries anything stupid, shoot him in the leg, not the head. I want him conscious for questioning." The Orion, Krell, grinned and stepped aside. We moved past him into a narrow corridor that opened into a surprisingly spacious office. The walls were lined with encrypted server banks, Holographic displays showing data streams from a dozen different sources and enough surveillance equipment to monitor half the station. Behind a curved desk sat Trix. She looked exactly how I remembered her. Early 30s, human, with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight braid, and she wore the kind of tactical clothing that suggested she was ready for trouble at a moment's notice. A plasma carbine leaned against the desk, within easy reach. "Marcus Webb," she said, leaning back in her chair. "I heard you were dead, killed in a bar fight on Osiris Station, stabbed 17 times by a jealous arms dealer." Greatly exaggerated. That was a different Webb. I only get stabbed on Tuesdays. "And who's your friend?" "This is Sylkara. She's the reason I'm here." Trix's gaze shifted to the Arachnid, and I saw the moment recognition clicked. Her expression went carefully neutral, which for Trix meant she was already running calculations. "The Exiled Diplomat. Every bounty hunter and intelligence operative in 6 sectors is looking for her, and you brought her to my station." "I brought her to you because I need help. The kind only you can provide. Let me guess. Verification, secure data release, protection against 8 different imperial intelligence services who'd love to see you both vaporized." Trix shook her head. "You always did have a talent for picking impossible fights. Will you help?" She studied me for a long moment. "You saved my life on Arcturus, got me out when my cover was blown and my own agency left me to die. I told you I owed you one, that I'd pay that debt when it mattered." She paused. "This matters. But if I do this, if I help you take on the coalition, I'm burning every bridge I've built. They'll come after me too." "I know. That's why I'm asking, not demanding. You've got no reason to risk everything for us." "Except Sarah Chen was my friend too." Trix's voice softened. "She came to me 3 weeks before she died, told me about the investigation, about the conspiracy, asked me to dig deeper, verify what she'd found. I told her I couldn't help, that it was too dangerous, too big. I chose my safety over her mission." She looked away. And when I heard what happened, how she died getting someone out, I knew I'd made the wrong choice. Sylkara stepped forward, mandibles clicking softly. Sarah never blamed anyone. She understood the cost of what she was asking. She told me she'd made peace with whatever happened because exposing the truth was worth any price. Maybe, but I've been carrying that guilt ever since. So yes, I'll help. Not because of the debt, but because Sarah deserved better than what I gave her. Relief flooded through me. So intense it was almost painful. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We've got a lot of work ahead of us." Trix pulled up a holographic interface. "Let me see the data crystal." Sylkara handed it over. Trix inserted it into an isolated terminal, one that wasn't connected to any network. Smart. If the data was compromised, if it contained trackers or malware, the damage would be contained. We waited while she worked, fingers dancing across holographic keys, eyes scanning information faster than I could follow. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Trix's expression grew darker with each passing moment. "This is real," she said finally. "All of it. Financial transfers routed through shell corporations, encrypted communications between high-ranking officials, orders to destabilize border regions, create refugee crises, manipulate commodity markets." She pulled up a document, and I saw names I recognized. Senators, admirals, corporate executives, people who'd given speeches about peace and prosperity while engineering wars for profit. If this gets out, it'll destroy governments. Entire power structures will collapse. "Good," I said. "They deserve it." "Maybe. But collapse creates chaos, and chaos creates opportunities for something worse to rise from the ashes. Are you prepared for that consequence?" I looked at Sylkara, saw the determination in her alien eyes, The same fire Sarah had carried. Worse than a galaxy where 40 billion people died for someone's profit margin. I'll take my chances. Trix nodded slowly. Then we do this right. No half measures. We release everything simultaneously across every major network. Independent journalists, resistance cells, even the Empire's own internal communication systems. We flood the zone with so much information they can't suppress it all. How long will that take? 3 days to set up the relay network, another 2 to verify secure channels and confirm receipt nodes. 5 days total. We don't have 5 days. They know we're here. They'll come. Then we make sure they can't stop us when they do. Trix stood up, already moving. Krell, I need a full security lockdown. No one in or out of this sector without my clearance. And get me a line to the fringe militia. Tell them I'm calling in every favor they owe me. The next 72 hours were a blur of preparation and mounting tension. Trix worked with brutal efficiency, coordinating with contacts across a dozen systems, building a network that would distribute the data faster than any imperial shutdown could contain it. I helped where I could, mostly standing watch and trying not to think about how badly this could go wrong. Sylkara surprised me. She wasn't just sitting idle, waiting to be protected. She'd started reaching out through encrypted channels to other arachnids, to minority communities across the empires who'd suffered from the coalition's manipulations, building support, preparing people for the truth that was coming. She had a strength I hadn't expected, a quiet determination that reminded me of Sarah. On the 4th day, they came. The attack started with precision strikes on the station's external defenses, coordinated plasma barrages that took out communication arrays and shield generators. Then boarding teams, 3 different factions working together despite their usual rivalries. They wanted Sylkara that badly. Krell and his security team held the first wave, turning the corridors into kill zones, but I knew it wouldn't last. These weren't amateurs. They were professionals who'd been given unlimited resources and a single objective: silence the diplomat and destroy the data. How long until the relay activates? I asked Trix, as explosions shook the office. 40 minutes, maybe less if they don't breach the server room. They'll breach it. They always do. Then we buy time. Trix grabbed her carbine. Sylkara, get in the panic room. Marcus and I will hold them as long as we can. No. Sylkara's voice was steady despite the chaos. If I hide, if I let others die protecting me, then I'm no better than the people we're fighting. I stay. I fight. You're a diplomat, not a soldier. I'm a person who's tired of running. She pulled something from beneath her cloak, a compact energy weapon I didn't recognize. Sarah died standing her ground. I won't dishonor her memory by cowering. I looked at Trix. She shrugged. You're called Webb. She's your responsibility. She's not anyone's responsibility. She's her own person. I checked my pistol, made sure the charge pack was full. Stay behind cover. Don't take unnecessary risks. And if I tell you to move, you move. Understood? Sylkara's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement or defiance. Understood. The door exploded inward. I dove behind the desk, returning fire at the shapes moving through the smoke. Trix was already shooting, her carbine lighting up the doorway with plasma bolts. Sylkara moved with alien grace, using her 8 legs to position herself at an angle the attackers didn't expect, firing controlled bursts that caught 2 hostiles in the chest. They kept coming, professional, relentless. I'd seen this kind of assault before, overwhelming force designed to crush any resistance through sheer numbers. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. But we were also fighting for something that mattered. That changed the equation. I grabbed a flashbang from Trix's desk, threw it into the corridor, and charged through the detonation while they were still blind. Combat geometry, muscle memory, the skills I'd learned keeping Marines alive in impossible situations. I moved through their formation like water. Close quarters brutality that didn't give them time to coordinate. Broke one's arm, kicked another's knee backward, put my pistol against a third's helmet and pulled the trigger. Somewhere behind me, Trix and Sylkara were holding the office, making every entry point a death trap. We were buying time, seconds, minutes. Whatever it took to let the relay complete. A plasma bolt caught me in the shoulder. Pain exploded through my body, but I kept moving, kept fighting, because stopping meant dying, and dying meant failing, and I'd failed too many people already. The relay timer hit 0 across the galaxy, on 1,000 different networks. The data released. Evidence of conspiracy, of engineered wars, of 40 billion deaths bought and paid for by people who'd never see a battlefield. The truth, raw and undeniable, flooding into the public consciousness faster than any suppression effort could contain it. We'd done it. I collapsed against the wall, blood seeping through my jacket. Trix was beside me, applying emergency medical foam to the wound, while Sylkara stood guard, her weapon still trained on the corridor where bodies lay scattered. "It's done," Trix said, showing me her data pad. "On every major network, every independent journalist, every resistance cell, they can't stop it now." Sylkara lowered her weapon. All 8 of her eyes were fixed on the holographic feeds, showing riots erupting across imperial worlds, governments scrambling to contain the fallout, officials being arrested in real time as populations demanded answers. "Sarah would have wanted to see this," she said softly. "She's seeing it." I struggled to my feet, ignoring the pain. "Somewhere. And she's proud of you. Of us. We did this together." Emergency klaxons wailed as station security finally arrived, too late to matter. The boarding teams retreated, abandoning their mission now that the objective was moot. The data was out. The truth was spreading, and 8 empires were watching their carefully constructed lies crumble in real time. It would take months, maybe years, to sort through the aftermath. Governments would fall. Trials would be held. Justice, real justice, might actually prevail for once. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I'd kept my promise, done what Sarah had believed I could do. Proven that one broken soldier and an exiled diplomat could stand against empires and win. 3 weeks later, I was back aboard the Ashfall, preparing for departure from Kepler Station. Trix had arranged for new identification, clean credentials that would let me move freely again. Sylkara was staying, working with the coalition of reformers and investigators who'd emerged from the chaos. She had testimony to give, people to coordinate with, a future that looked like it might actually mean something. She came to see me off at the docking bay, all 8 legs carrying her with that same grace I'd learned to appreciate. "Where will you go?" she asked. "Somewhere quiet. Maybe back to the fringe sectors. Find a colony that needs help rebuilding." I managed a tired smile. I'm told I'm good at saving people when they need it. "You are. Sarah was right about you." "She was right about a lot of things." I paused. "What about you? What comes next?" "Testimony. Political reform. Making sure those 40 billion deaths meant something." Sylkara's mandibles clicked softly. "And then, maybe, finding my place in a galaxy that's finally ready to change." "Sounds like a good plan." "Marcus, thank you for everything, for believing when I couldn't, for carrying me when I couldn't walk alone." "That's what humans do. We carry each other. Even when we're broken, even when we're tired, we show up." I reached out, awkward and uncertain, and Sylkara extended one leg to meet my hand. The touch was strange, alien, but somehow right. "You ever need someone who's too stubborn to quit, you know where to find me." "I do, and I won't forget." I watched her walk away, back toward the station and the work that waited. Then I boarded the Ashfall, settled into the pilot's seat, and fired up the engines. The void stretched ahead, infinite and dark. But somewhere in that darkness was hope, was proof that the right thing still mattered, that honor wasn't just a relic, that people, human and alien alike, could stand together against the powerful and win. Sarah had believed in that, had died for it, and now, finally, I believed it too. The stars called. I answered. And for the first time in 7 years, I flew toward them without running from what I'd left behind. Because I'd learned something carrying Sylkara across a hostile galaxy. Sometimes the weight on your back isn't a burden. Sometimes it's a reminder of why you keep standing, keep fighting, keep believing that tomorrow might be worth the cost of today. And that was worth dying for. Worth living for, too. The ashfall accelerated, leaving Kepler Station behind, leaving the past behind. Flying toward whatever came next with the knowledge that I'd finally earned the right to meet it with my head high. Sarah would have approved.